Hello, I'm Lisa, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. So if you're watching this video, you're likely like my clients who are highly intelligent people, maybe even highly sensitive people. People that are aware of all of the complexities in the world, yet not really sure what to do with all of that awareness. I like to joke sometimes that ignorance is bliss and awareness is a bitch. So let me tell you a little bit about who I am. I have been fascinated by the human experience since I was a little child. I had a few experiences that I consider to be spiritual experiences that just made me question a lot from a very young age. I got a bachelor's degree in child and family development from the University of Georgia, and then shortly went on to get my master's degree in humanistic and transpersonal psychology. I think it's important to differentiate humanistic and transpersonal psychology because it's not always the mainstream's view of what psychology is. In humanistic psychology, there is this knowing that we are all unique individuals. We all have our own authentic process of self-actualizing. And that's really important because just like everything else, we are a part of nature. So growth is what we're oriented towards. But we all know through conditioning, trauma, complex trauma, relational trauma, growth doesn't always feel safe. Transpersonal psychology is that knowing that there's something bigger than us. So yes, we are individuals, but we're individuals in part of a collective. We are all a part of something bigger than us. Some people use religion to justify what that is and say what that is, and some people don't find comfort in that, and so it becomes a personal spirituality, a personal discovery of what is most meaningful to you. What do you want your life to be about? And those aren't easy questions. They're not easy questions because they always have to be asked, because everything is constantly evolving and changing. And so sometimes if people are set on needing an answer, they're not going to be fulfilled with broadening perspective to make room for there not being an answer. Because the reality is that life is not as linear or as black and white as much of our culture normalizes. There's a lot of nuance, and there's a lot of gray area, and there's a lot of room for individual choice and personal agency. So as I was getting my graduate degree, I was also doing a 200-hour yoga teacher training. And I just feel like it was divine intervention that studying these bigger questions of life, being introduced to Eastern philosophy, and really knowing how important wisdom through the body was, came to me at such a young age. My whole adulthood has been about blending personal growth and spirituality to help people live more meaningful lives, more authentic lives, to feel less exhausted, to feel less resentful, to feel less depressed, to notice when they're feeling anxious, and to learn what to do with that behavior. So let me tell you a little bit more about how I've come to this more integrated model. And I'm going to disclose a little bit more about myself than maybe a traditional psychotherapist would, so make sure you want to know things about me. But I've also found in this work that sometimes I'm more relatable when I do disclose things about me. And people realize that I am not just intellectualizing what I'm talking about, but I'm also embodying it. And I know how hard that is, and I know how much courage it takes. So my path has been anything but linear. I graduated with my master's, I worked in the inpatient psych unit at the local hospital, and I was quickly disillusioned by the medical model. I saw people in more than just their diagnoses. I saw people that were trying to have cathartic experiences, that were giving drugs to sedate them. And I'm not saying that sometimes that's not required and that real mental illness is not a thing. I absolutely believe that it is. I also just found I don't fit into that model very well, because it feels very limiting to me. So many times I don't think that our symptoms are something to pathologize, but something to be really curious about. And to do that, we have to practice being really compassionate with what we're becoming aware of. The tendency is to quickly jump to judgment and fear when we notice that maybe we're in a low mood, or we don't know how to relax, or we just aren't feeling motivated to do the things that we know we need to do. Let's be curious about that. Let's be curious about why that might be, so that those parts feel heard, which is part of healing. I truly believe that we're living in a time where the world is so complex and there's so much complex trauma present. And complex trauma is subtle trauma, relational trauma, developmental trauma. It's not shock trauma like a famine or a war or an acute incident of abuse. I believe that we all have an abandonment wound. And some people's abandonment wound is deeper than others, and some people aren't even aware that they have an abandonment wound. But I just think that most people were not raised by emotionally mature or aware people, so how could we not? A lot of times in childhood, we had to abandon ourselves in order to survive the environment that we were in. And sometimes as adulthood, we notice ways that we still do that. And we might even notice ways that we don't want to do that, and we just don't know how not to. And so this is where my model has come in. This is not something that fits into a 6 to 8 session and it's done. Growth is ongoing. Experiences to be integrated are ongoing. Awareness of ourselves and others just gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and there's no end. So sometimes with awareness, we have symptoms that might look like depression or anxiety, but they don't quite feel like they're extreme enough to go to a therapist, yet we know we need some support. Sometimes when people are in this situation, they go to a coach. There's a lot of coaches online right now that are helping people to solve problems and live more authentically and in alignment with their purpose. Yet a lot of times, coaches don't work on the deeper levels, the psychology of what makes you who you are. Why do you do the behaviors that you do? What are the survival roles that you have been conditioned to believe that you need?